If you are shopping for knives, swords, flashlights, or other outdoor gear or EDC gear, don't forget to check out the descriptions of my videos down there. There are discount codes for custom titanium knife scales, flashlights from Neil's Gadgets. There's lots of information on how to find all the products that I use in my videos. Using linked information is your choice, but if you do, it might help you save quite a bit of money, and it really does help me bring you lots of cool content like this. Fixed blades are better knives than folding knives. You don't have to put a hinge on a fixed blade so it's stronger. You don't have to worry about folding the blade into the handle so you can make the handle a better shape for your hand. Overall, they're just better knives. They're easier to clean in dirty circumstances. So why don't more people carry fixed blades? Well, a fixed blade is harder to carry than a folding knife, right? It's bigger, it's bulkier. Today, we're going to talk about a ton of different fixed blades and which ones are worth your hard-earned money. We've got a lot of new knives like the new Kizer Drop Bear fixed blade. We've got the new Tenable Parr fixed blade. We've got rakes, we've got Vosteeds, we've got Civivis. We've got a ton of stuff to talk about today. This is going to be a long video, so put this one on while you're doing laundry or cooking in the kitchen. But it's going to be a fun look at a bunch of knives, and it should help you pick out which ones are worth your hard-earned money. Let's go. First of all, let's talk about the metric butt ton of knives that I'm talking about today and sort of what we're comparing them to. So we have the new Kizer Drop Bear fixed blade that's been very popular recently. I've tested this. You'll see some testing footage of that. I have the Olitans. This is their 4-inch fixed blade. I don't even know if it has a name. There will be links for all this down below if you want to find it. We have the Ruike Hornet, which is a knife that I have tested on this channel before and really loved. We have the new and exciting Tenable Parr, which is a very small fixed blade. You can see it next to all the other ones here. We have Mossy Oak's new budget fixed blade. This is I believe this is the 3-inch version. The Warncliffe style blade, again, doesn't have an actual name, just the 3-inch version is what they call it. This is the new Vosteed Halfback, which is very impressive. We also have the Civivi TimberBark, which has garnered a lot of social media attention recently. We have the Vosteed Mink. We have the Fintiso, what is this? Fintiso Nazar, right? Which is a much larger one than the others. And we're kind of comparing these to what I consider to be my gold standard for carryable fixed blades, which is the Cold Steel Pendleton Light Hunter and the Morinaive Craft line. So this is probably my favorite, smallish carryable fixed blade just because of the way it fits my hand and the blade shape and stuff. Not my favorite steel, but we'll compare all of these with kind of the performance of these guys up here, which is well established. Help for all of your buying decisions. Let's start with the Kizer. So this drop bear has garnered a ton of attention lately. It has the Swiss Army knife style tweezers and toothpick in the back here, which is really useful if you like that old school kind of fine work tools, and you can use them as a screwdriver. It's just kind of a fun addition if you like the old school Swiss Army knives. Super, super tough heat treatment on this, which you'd expect from Kizer. I purposely abused this knife and kind of tried to break it a little bit. It just shrugged off everything. You can see there's no deformation on that tip or anything, despite all my abuse. This comes in a ton of different steels, in a ton of different blade shapes. So there's pretty much a version for anybody, as long as the handle shape works for you. And what I mean by that is, in my XL size mitts, this is a 3-finger, kind of a 3 1/4, 3.5 finger knife. And it's very thin, and it's not super high this way. So this is a very small handle, and it's kind of sort of just big enough for me, given that the blade size is so small and I don't need a ton of leverage on this blade, but it's not big. My sister, who is 100 pounds soaking wet, Really liked the handle shape and size of this knife, but it's a bit small. If you choke up on it, you know, you can get up here and get all 4 fingers on there pretty easily. And there's absolutely nothing uncomfortable about the shape of the handle because they've smoothed everything out. There's no sharp areas. This finger choil at the bottom is not so defined that it locks your hand in, so I can put my little finger right there on the point of it and still be very comfortable. So it's just a bit small, but if you need something that's this small, it is a very well-built choice. Now, if this reminds me of kind of the old Cold Steel Super Edge knives, like the little tiny guys that you could clip anywhere, but this is kind of an evolved, slightly better version of this. Now, most versions of these knives come with some sort of belt clip like this. They all have kind of slight variations, but it's mostly these kind of bulky plastic belt clip style things. I think these are mostly just kind of good for horizontal belt carry. If you like these, you'll probably like most of these sheaths. If you don't like them like me, you probably won't be super impressed with most of these. I will point out the knives that have done something a little innovative or something that I think is a little better than this. But this is what you're dealing with on most of them. The drop bear is no exception. It came with one of those bulky plastic clips. I've done some experimenting with obviously a bunch of different types of clips on here. You know, this is a okay sheath system. It's a pretty standard Kydex sheath, but nothing to write home about there. Okay, let's move on to the Olitans, because this actually shows some spice and some innovation in what they've done here. So they've done a lot of attention to detail. 14C28 end blade, micarta handle, which I love. This one has bulked out the handle a little bit. The handle's a little bit wider and it's a little bit deeper. So this one fits much better in my XL size hands. It's kind of what I would describe as just enough handle, where I can get my fingers around it and I can close them tightly, and it doesn't want to spin in my hand or anything, but it's none too big. It's still lightweight, it's still small, it's still compact. Not as compact as some of these knives. If we put it in the sheath and compare it to something like the Civivi TimberBark, you will see it is a bit longer. But it isn't any heavier, right? Interestingly enough, this is actually a little bit lighter than even the Civivi TimberBark package, and it's not because they've sacrificed any strength. 14C28 end blade, if I didn't mention that. But what they've done is they have extended this flat grind on the blade all the way through the handle, meaning they have left the spine of the blade at full thickness for this entire knife. And then what they've done is they've flat ground the whole thing, so you can see it's a whole lot thinner on the bottom of the handle than it is on the back of the handle. And what this does is it doesn't sacrifice any strength. So this knife is just as strong. I mean, it's a reinforced handle. You're not going to break that much blade tang in the handle, but it's lightened this knife to the point where it is as light as a like a hidden tang knife, something like this Cold Steel. Like it's in this realm of lightness, even though it still has a 4-inch blade and even though it has a full micarta and full tang handle. That is a really cool piece of engineering that kind of shows the level of attention to detail on this knife. The one thing I dislike about this knife is that it doesn't have any sort of guard or finger protection, kind of like the Halfback, right? It has this little mini guard in between your fingers and the blade. This one has nothing, so you do have to pay a little bit of attention not to accidentally push your finger up onto the blade. But I mean, I never did it when I was using it, and I kind of like that for cutting rope, because you can cinch your finger right up to the bottom there and make sure you're not going to catch anything off the back of the blade. Blade shape is a great skinning profile. It's got that dropped point, so it's in line with your hand for piercing. Just a super versatile, very well made, very comfortable little fixed blade. I don't like the sheath quite as well as some others on this one, because this is the only sheath that's made from ABS plastic, rather than Kydex, so it's a little thicker. It doesn't hold quite as securely, so while this does click in, it pops out with very little force. And it was a little bit of a challenge sometimes when I had this in my pocket to know, did I get that blade clicked in there or not? It was a little harder to feel on the detent. But overall, this is probably one of my favorites as far as design on the knife, as long as you don't mind that little bit of extra care that you have to take on the handle. Moving on, we're going to move on to the Ruike Hornet. Now, this is a knife that I've had on my channel before. It has, again, 14C28N blade steel, which is one of my favorite budget steels, and a lot of these knives are using it, which I think is a good thing. This knife has a bit more heft to it than others. It is a bit heavier. Let's do some weights here just so I can show a good comparison. So the Ruike is coming in at 3.77 ounces. Contrastingly, the Olitans, which has a longer blade on it and pretty near as much handle, is only 2.8 ounces. Comparing that to something like the Cold Steel Pendleton Light, we're looking at 2.67. The Mora knife, we're looking at 2.91. So we're all in a very similar range here. The difference being with this one, why it's a little heavier, is you do have the full tang, full thickness handle all the way through here. They've lightened it by taking out this big hole, which feels a little bit funny at first, but it doesn't really affect your grip or overall usage of the knife. All the parts where you would still grip are still there. What I like about this one so much is the shape of that handle, right? So my XL size hands, this is by far the most comfortable handle of any that I've mentioned so far. It's not as comfortable as the Mora, which again is just larger and thicker, but it is very good overall as far as comfort, if you don't mind carrying a little bit of extra heft in your everyday fixed blade. The sheath on this, I've praised this sheath in the past, and I'm not as enthusiastic about it now. So this is also an ABS sheath. It does click in securely, and I do love the fact that it has this locking, pivoting belt loop. So I can carry this tip down, I can carry it scout carry horizontally on my belt, I can carry it tip up, and all I have to do is twist that belt clip and unlock it like this. What I don't like about it is that it's still handle heavy, right? So where this balances on that clip, the handle wants to tip down. So you can't really put it in your pocket as a pocket clip sheath very easily. It just doesn't lend itself to that. And it is really thick this way. So Kydex obviously is more versatile than ABS, but it's an okay sheath system. I would rather see something that comes up a little further and makes the balance point here so it doesn't tip one way or another on your belt. And I would rather see something you could put in a pocket too on an EDC Fixed Blade. This is quite possibly the best durability-wise. It has a thicker tip than the other knives. And like I said, I tested this before. These have absolutely incredible edge retention. They retain an edge for a very, very long time. 14C obviously doesn't rust very much. So this is on the heftier side of EDC Fixed Blades, but still comfortable if you have big hands. Next, we have the Mossy Oak Fixed Blade. Now this one is definitely on the heavy side. So I love the pointy Warncliffe style blade. That I feel like is very useful. It gives you a lot of cutting surface that's great for cutting rope and stabbing point first. This one is 5.24 ounces, so definitely on the heftier side. Mainly that's just because of the thickness on that blade stock. The handle shape is a bit odd, and I didn't really understand why it was shaped like that at first. But if you rig up the sheath like I did here, again, similar, comes with your standard plastic belt clip thing. I have a double pocket clip on this. This is a Alti clip, kind of a locking pocket clip. So this kind of goes in your pants pocket like this. And when it's in your pocket that way, this taper to the blade makes it very easy to draw. So I can get my fingers underneath this tapered part of the blade, put my thumb on the back here, and the friction between my fingers, not wanting to slide off that tapered handle, pulls it out of the sheath very easily, even though this is held in extremely securely. So this is probably the best sheath system of any of these knives. It also, you can see it's blade heavy. So if you're wearing this in your pocket, it wants to stay in your pocket and not tilt its way out. I wanted you to see the difference between the handle heavy and the blade heavy configuration on this one. The blade heavy configuration means that no matter where I turn that knife, it wants to sit down into a blade down, handle up position in my pocket. It comes out nice and easily, but it still locks in very securely. So this type of blade heavy configuration is really what you want in a sheath setup for an everyday carry fixed blade. So despite the fact that this is a heavier knife, the superior sheath molding and the design of the handle make this really easy to carry and really easy to get out of your pocket. Now the handle is a bit weird. That tapered shape to the handle does make it feel a bit strange in your hand because these fingers are more open than your front two fingers, but it's not too bad. There is a slight sharp spot right there on the handle where those grinds came together and they didn't quite round it off. You can sand that down. It's just G10. So that's not a deal breaker. And this one's only about 20 bucks. I have done edge retention testing on this knife. It does hold an exceptional edge. We're talking like over 300 cuts on this guy. Titanium nitride coating on the blade, which looks pretty cool, and it makes this blade even more rust resistant. So as far as bang for buck, deals, cheapness to usability and durability ratio, this thing is way up there because this is, like I said, $20 range. So this competes in value very well against something like the Mora knife, which is, these are only like 14 bucks. But the 12C steel doesn't quite hold an edge as well as the 14C. Cold steel Pendleton Light is pretty similar as far as edge retention. It's obviously a bit lighter, bigger handle, so this one's more compact and a little more carryable. So pluses and minuses there, but if you don't mind the extra heft, or even if you want the extra heft for durability's sake, this is a inexpensive buy it and abuse it. Just put some other clips on it. I think I got this one on AliExpress and this one from Amazon. But the double pocket sheath design, which also allows an appendix carry of these knives. Conclusions on this one: great sheath system, relatively easy to carry, a little on the heavy side, but super durable. Great value on this particular knife. On the other end of the spectrum, we have this new Tenable Parr. So this is obviously much smaller. This is definitely leaning more into the EDC Fixed Blade idea. Tiny compared to my Hogue Deca even. Even if I compare this to the Kizer Drop Bear, which I would say is this knife's nearest competitor, the handle is very small. Now it does have more blade than the Drop Bear, and I really like the Wharncliffe style blade on a small knife especially. Those of you who watch this channel a lot know that I like a finger choil here, but I don't necessarily like this type of finger choil. This one is better done than most, where all I have to do is kind of slide my finger up there, and I can very easily tell where that blade starts. It's not as dangerous on a small knife like this, I feel, because this knife is only going to be used for lightweight tasks. This handle is very round, right? Because of that, it's a lot tougher to keep this knife from spinning in my hand than it is something like the Drop Bear, which is more comparable. This is a much flatter, right? Height to width ratio is a lot more. I can't twist that in my hand at all. This one, yeah, I mean, I can just spin that in my hand without any effort, which means opening your packages, opening your bag of chips, cutting a string off your sweater. Like, that's pretty much the most ambitious you're going to get with this knife as far as, you know, tasks that you're going to use it for. Now, it does have plenty of thickness on that spine. It does have a grippy micarta handle. So if you can get a good grip on it, maybe if you've got little tiny hands or something, there's no reason why this knife couldn't be used for more ambitious stuff. It's just not well suited to that because the handle is so small and so minimal. So while you know, it's well designed and everything, I'm not as high on this knife as a lot of reviewers are. I would not keep this. Now, they have given it a pocket clip on the sheath, but it's still handle heavy, right? So if you're wearing this in a pocket of lightweight material, it's going to want to tip itself outward and out of your pocket. Let me show you what I mean here. So here is the Tenable Parr. It has just the pocket clip. It slides very easily into the pocket, but that handle heavy nature of that knife tends to want to make it go horizontal on you. The thumb ramp does let you pull it out of the sheath very quickly and easily. It snaps in very quickly and easily with one hand. But the fact that that clip doesn't lock means that it's super easy to accidentally get pulled out of your pocket. And the fact that it wants to tilt that way makes it a little bit dangerous to carry in your pocket. While we are talking about versatile, cool blade sheath systems, we need to talk about the Vosteed Halfback. And boy, howdy, do we need to talk about this knife. This has a similar rotating clip system to the Ruike Hornet, but what you can see as I compare them side by side here is this one has a narrower depth, right? So this is not as thick as the Ruike system. It is thinner, it's easier to carry. This one is also not locking. So all I have to do in order to change the angle of the sheath is twist this one. So I can clip it to my belt this way, and then I can twist it this way, and I can stick it in my pocket. So this, for me, was the sheath system that I wanted to change the least. This was one of the more versatile options, and I didn't do anything to this one. You've heard me talking about the Mossy Oak one, but I took off the original clip and I put these ones. This is probably a better Kydex sheath, but the belt clip sheath on this one is really, really nice and versatile, and it's really the only one that I kept factory out of all of these. So here is that ratcheting sheath system. All I have to do is twist it to get it to be where I want it to be. I can turn that like that, and then I can just clip the blade to my belt like so, and it locks on very securely. That's upside down, but you can switch the sides of it. I have it this way because then all I have to do is unclip it from my belt, twist it this way, and then I can put it in my pocket, and this is still on the blade heavy side. So now I've got a pocket carry fixed blade, and I didn't even have to move or adjust anything on that sheath. All I did was twist it. So that is why the sheath system on this Vosteed Halfback really rises to the top for me and makes it a much easier to carry and much more versatile knife. You can stick it in your pocket, stick it on your belt. The knife itself is also incredibly well designed. So I love a pocket carry, a fixed blade knife that stops me from riding up on the blade, right? There's no danger of me slipping my finger up onto there. It doesn't have a ridiculously large sharpening choil that's small enough that it's not too hard, not too bad for catching on rope and fishing line and things like that. The blade stock is plenty thick, but it has a nice thin stabby point. The handle is smooth and comfortable. This knife for me functioned best in kind of a pinch grip like this because it's a little small for me. Again, XL size hands. If your hands are a little smaller than that, like if you wear a size large or smaller glove, this knife is going to be absolutely perfect for you. For me, I have a little bit of tough time cinching down hard enough in a stone fist grip like that to really keep the knife from rocking like this in my grip. But if I put my finger along the back of it like this and get it in a pinch grip, This is really precise, and I was able to carve into food. I did some onion and pepper prep with this knife. I've done rope cutting and plastic cutting with it. And Vosteed has even put traction grippers on the sides right where my fingers grab that knife. So they've thought of people with large hands even on this knife. They've done the finger choils properly where that one kind of locks you in right up to the top. But these ones are subtle enough that wherever your fingers fall on there, depending on your hand size, it's not going to be uncomfortable. So this is how you design a good handle. It's a little smaller than the Olitans handle, which is why I like this one the best as far as handle shape, but it's still pretty good. Thickness is still great. It's not heavy, nice, secure without being too firm. Kydex sheath, again, 14C28N blade and G10 handle. Excellent little, and this is probably the best thought out package. So if you just want to buy one, you don't want to worry about how you're going to have to adjust it. This is probably my favorite as far as pull it off the shelf, stick it in your pocket. It is a lot smaller than some of the other ones, so it's very carryable, but it doesn't make the mistake of the Tenable Parr and kind of go too small. As far as cutting surface compared to something on my gold standard Mora knife here, it does have quite a bit less blade going here. So that does limit its effectiveness in certain tasks. It's not really a big task knife, but you could push this into service at something as rough as whittling wood or splitting kindling if you had to, just because it's a full-tang fixed blade, so there's no durability issues there. I love the fact that it comes in blue. It's kind of a subtle blue. It's not outrageous. It'll pretty much go for anybody. It does come in different handle colors, and that's pretty much the only choice you get on this knife, but it's pretty much the only choice you need on this knife. So excellent little addition here. I would put this, it's hard to rank these because there are so many of them. I would definitely put this ahead of the Kizer Drop Bear. It is not a whole lot bigger, but because you get so much more blade length and not a whole lot bigger or heavier of a knife, this just is a whole lot more useful and versatile than the Drop Bear. And again, you don't pay a premium in weight or price or anything like that. Now we get into something that's a little different. So we're going to go up in size quite a bit here. This is the Vosteed Mink. Again, there are lots of different blade shapes on this. There are lots of different handle colors on this. More of a frag pattern micarta here rather than the G10 that's on some of these knives. What I want to show you on this knife right away is the weight. So despite the fact that we are dealing with a 4-inch fixed blade, we're only looking at 3.6 ounces here. For reference, the Ruike Hornet, which is one of the heavier knives here, you're looking at 3.7 ounces, and it's a smaller knife, right? Handle is pretty similar, but you're losing an inch of blade real estate there. And the reason why the Vosteed has been able to keep this knife so light is because they've kind of gone the opposite, where they've done a nice, thin, slicey blade stock on this. So rather than just saying, hey, we're going to make a small knife so it's easy to carry, they said, we're going to make a big knife light so that it's easy to carry. Again, small sharpening choil. This one did have the little guard there that stuck out beyond the end of the knife. I ground that down a little bit because I wanted to be able to use this on a cutting board. That full flat grind just does so well on a cutting board. It will do even better if you had the drop point version. I chose the Wharncliffe version because I do a lot of rope cutting and work around wet areas. We have a river in our backyard. So I wanted the Wharncliffe kind of aggressive point version of this. It does have Nitro V steel, which is not up to the standards of the 14C28N of a lot of these other knives. So it does need sharpening a lot more often. This only did about 200 in my edge retention tests. Most of these knives in the other, 200 cuts, I mean, in my edge retention test before the edge failed. Most of these other knives are 300 or pushing 400 on most of the 14C28N knives. They're doing like 400 cuts. So not as good of edge retention, but it's very easy to sharpen, so you're not going to spend a lot of time sharpening it. I love how grippy these frag pattern handles are. So this handle is pretty much the same size as the Olitans handle, which is to say just big enough for my hands. But it's flatter inside, flatter on the sides anyway, and that frag pattern gives much more grip. Grip is not lacking on this knife, but it is present in excess on this knife. You are not losing control of that. I would call that just big enough for my hands. Again, if you wear a large glove or smaller, this is going to be plenty for you. So sheath system, again, is pretty standard. It came with your standard big bulky plastic clip like this one. I took it off. I put a horizontal belt clip on one side and pocket clip on the other side for appendix carry or for in the pocket carry. Nice versatile knife and not too expensive, although a lot of these are about the same price. So when you're talking about going from Vosteed Mink to Vosteed Halfback, the price isn't that different. You are getting a smaller knife with the Halfback, but you're getting an upgrade in steel. So there's economic questions to be answered both ways on those. As far as shape of the knife, again, it's a bigger knife. I love the knife. I love the blade shape. I love the versatility of a larger knife, but I wanted something, as far as my usage, a little bit smaller for everyday carry. This is more of a, going to go on your belt kind of knife. You can carry it in your pocket because it's nice and light, but it's not really as much in the EDC realm as some of these other knives that we're going to talk about and that we have talked about. A super popular knife that's getting a lot of attention on YouTube and other places right now is this one. So this is the Civivi TimberBark. And this is the knife that I actually took the most interest in, and this is where I started this video, is by getting a hold of one of these. There is a lot to love about this knife, and there is a big problem here. So what I love about this knife is that they've gone with a thin blade stock, but not too thin. It's still plenty sturdy. They've given you a nice high full flat grind, so it's super slicey. G10 handle, 14C28N blade, everything I kind of like about a small compact fixed blade. It's pretty close to exactly the same size as the Vosteed Halfback. If we're looking at weight, we're looking right at 3 ounces for the Civivi. The Halfback, I don't think I weighed that before. We'll weigh it this time. 2.94, so it's indistinguishable in your hand for weight. This is where the Olitans is really going to show you some stuff, right? So the Olitan is only 2.83 ounces, despite being larger of a knife in every way and having a thicker blade, because they've tapered that handle or tapered the stock so much inside the handle. Civivi doesn't do that. It's just regular flat stock. So that is why this knife and this knife weigh more than this one, even though this is a larger knife. So there's some innovation here. Interestingly enough, this handle on the inside here, I've taken out this bottom screw. The knife on the inside handle is skeletonized. So there are big holes in this tang, but it still doesn't get you down as light as tapering the tang like this one did. Again, G10 instead of micarta, so there's a bit more weight there. I love the versatile blade shape, so there's enough belly to be really good at skinning fish or skinning game. It's pretty good on a cutting board because you can get a good contact of that edge until up to about there where your fingers start to hit the cutting board. Civivi does a great job heat treating their 14C28N, so there's no problems there. The problem is where you get this direction from the blade, right? So I'm not a huge fan of big sharpening choils like this. This was probably designed to be a combination finger choil and sharpening choil. If you like that, you're probably going to be a fan of this knife. I'm not as much of a fan of it because it puts the blade further away from your fingers. So something like the Vosteed Halfback with its angled handle to bring the blade edge down this way more, that gets the blade edge very close to my hand, but it's still away from me, right? So I can put a lot of force when I'm whittling wood or something right down here by the bottom of the blade, and I can get a really good amount of pressure there without feeling like I'm creating a lot of twisting leverage in my hand and giving me a good purchase on whatever I'm cutting. Leverage is mechanical advantage. That matters with knives. On this one, the blade is so much further away from my hand, the cutting surface is, that if I'm cutting something up here, there's a lot more rotational force on the knife handle and on my hand, and therefore it's less comfortable. The other big problem is the shape and size of this handle. So they've got two very defined finger choils here. It is extremely uncomfortable. So my hand doesn't fit there, right? I have my big XL size mitts. That point sticks right into my finger. Also, this handle is very thin, so it doesn't fill out my hand much. That's not a problem if there's enough depth to it. Comparing this with even something like the Kizer Drop Bear, you can see that handle on the Drop Bear is way deeper than it is on the TimberBark, meaning I can't close my finger around that, right? I can't physically bend my finger far enough to get it to make contact with that part of the handle. So now when I grip this knife, I've got my middle finger making contact here, I've got this finger being stabbed, and I got this finger not holding on to anything. So it's extremely uncomfortable in my hand. There are going to be some people who wear a size small glove whose hand fits perfectly in between those finger choils, and that's going to be really comfortable for them. This is not comfortable for me. It's a sort of kind of comfortable 3-finger knife, but then this part of the handle is splaying these two fingers apart, which is also really uncomfortable. So from a design perspective, Civivi kind of whiffed it here, right? They designed this for one person, which is the person who designed it, who has a very specific, very small size hand. And if your hand is exactly that size, it's going to be super comfortable. And if your hand is any other size than that, it's going to be super uncomfortable. So if your hands fit this knife, you're going to love it. If your hands don't fit this knife, like me, you're going to hate it. Sheath is kind of just okay. Pretty standard Kydex sheath. It was really tough to get this knife in and out at first. It has broken in quite a bit, so it's easier now. It's just a nice, secure knife now. You can hear it clicks in really loudly. So that isn't really here or there. But if you're sneaking up on game in the woods or something, a knife that's much quieter, like that, might be a whole lot better. You can also loosen that with a hairdryer or something, but it is very noisy, so it might not be the greatest hunting knife. Or it's definitely not a tactical knife. It's an EDC knife. Even when I do it quietly, it's still pretty loud. Much louder than any of the other ones so far. Lastly, I'm going to talk about this Fintiso knife. Now, the specs on it were very similar to the Vosteed Mink. Blade length, blade steel, etc. This, I believe, is another 14C knife. However, this is the opposite problem. So when I close my XL size mitt over that knife, I've got fully 1.5 inches of handle sticking out of there that's doing nothing. I can choke way back and maybe use this knife as a little bit of a chopping machete type deal. But this is something that would be a great skinner, but it's really heavy because the handle is just so much material. On this knife, we're looking at 7.5 ounces, and you could probably lose 1.5 ounces of that, maybe more, just by cutting the handle down to a reasonable size. Rarely, if ever, do I say that the handle on a knife is too big, but this one is huge. You can also see that it's incredibly thick. There's just so much material left in that handle. Comparing it to something like the Ruike, that's what I would consider a comfortable handle. This is like another piece of G10, like another complete handle scale, thicker than that handle. It's not out of line with something like the Mora knife. Mora knife is similar thickness, but this is full G10, which is super heavy. You know, is there anything wrong with the shape of that? No. Do you want to carry around that much more handle unnecessarily? Probably not. Now, if you are 500 pounds and have size triple XL hands, and you're looking for an everyday carry fixed blade that's not any longer than 4 inches, absolutely, this is 100% the knife that you've been looking for. It has one of the best sheath systems. That sheath comes up nice and far on the blade. It has an amazing thumb ramp. It has a rotating belt clip. Tip down is there. It does kind of sit well below your belt. If you are carrying it horizontally, going to be very handle heavy, but you can move it up a little bit. So kind of a weird sheath system, but it is securely holding itself in place. It would go in a pocket just for an absolute mountain of a human being. Gigantic hands will absolutely still find that knife nice and comfortable. So there is a huge plethora of EDC and somewhat larger and somewhat smaller fixed blades. Do any of them depose my Mora knife or my cold steel? Maybe. So as far as a durable, easy to carry, unafraid to be used hard, kind of small fixed blade, these two, the Olitans and the Vosteed Halfback, really kind of rose to the top for me. They're both pretty comfortable in the hand. They both have the 14C28 and steel, which I like. They both have nice handles. I would say for me, the Vosteed Halfback really kind of rose to the top just because it is the best thought out. I can put this in my pocket and not think about it. I didn't have to modify the sheath. I didn't have to modify the clip system. I just pulled it out of the package, stuck it in my pocket. I don't have to worry about my fingers riding up on the blade. So as far as a well-designed everyday carry fixed blade, I think this is currently about the best on the market. These run about $70, I think. Again, there'll be links down below. I like the fact that there are knives that are a lot cheaper than that. So I much obviously prefer the $14 Mora knife, but it's a little large, even in the smallest configuration, to stick in my pocket. It also comes with the standard Mora sheath, which is just a belt sheath. You don't have the versatility of doing a horizontal carry or doing in the pocket carry. So versatility, design-wise, this currently is my champion of the everyday carry fixed blades.